Violence broke out at Shanti Niketan in Birbhum district over a boundary wall dispute with the Vishwa Bharati University authorities. Locals had objection to certain changes that the university authorities wanted to make. While the property belonged to the university, locals had been traditionally using it for winter fairs. Today, around 3,000 people assembled, vandalized bricks laid for the boundary wall and ransacked university property. No police were seen at the spot. Close to 3,000 locals ransacked university property. Bricks laid for the boundary wall were destroyed. So this is major violence that we are reporting from Shanti Niketan. Vishwa Bharati University property vandalized. This happened in Birbhum. Major unrest triggered over a dispute on boundary wall. The violence broke out at Shanti Niketan in Birbhum district over a boundary wall dispute with the Vishwa Bharati University authorities. Locals had certain objections to the changes that the university authorities wanted to make. While the property belonged to the university, the locals had been traditionally using it for winter fairs, and therefore this new boundary wall is not something that the local residents were happy about. 3,000 people assembled and vandalized the bricks that were laid for the purpose of the boundary wall. Also, university property were ransacked. There was no police presence on the spot when all of this was happening, as you can see there in the pictures. Tamal Saha joining me on the phone line. Tamal, what exactly is this conflict about? The local residents were clearly angry with the university authorities for some sort of a new construction that was happening there in Birbhum?
Well, that's right. In Birbhum, Shantiniketan, Vishwa Bharati University has a lot of properties, and one of them they wanted to make more secured for better maintenance. It's a huge ground which is also open to people so far, but because it belongs to the university authorities wanted to give a proper boundary wall around the entire ground. Now, incidentally, the same ground is also being used for the legendary Poush Mela, which is almost a century old now, several decades old. The university authorities had planned to scrap the idea of holding the fair this time. And that is something of the local villagers, the local people, because they believe it's part of their heritage. They are also objected to the boundary wall erection because they thought this would also take away public access to the ground. The people had requested the university authorities, Vishwa Bharati University authorities, not to go for any kind of boundary wall at this point. However, because university authorities had already arranged for the construction materials, including bricks, villagers thought that without letting them know, the university would be putting up the boundary wall. And thus, there was a huge crowd of about 3,000 people who assembled in the morning. They ransacked the security area of their ground. They also vandalized the construction material just to send a message that they do not support this idea of boundary wall and they would be resisting it tooth and nail.
Absolutely. Well, public sentiment involved with this particular area, one can understand that there were fests, cultural fests held for decades in this area. So the idea of jeopardizing the prospect of holding that fest has angered people. At the same time, such vandalism, of course, is not acceptable. This is mob violence taking place, and the police should have been there to control the crowd without causing damage. Thanks, Tamal, for joining us with your inputs on the story.